Hey guys, Brian from Redtail Boas here. As you probably know, different boa constrictors can grow at dramatically different growth rates. Today I'm going to compare the sizes of some true Redtail Boas that are now a year old. A year ago in September 2020, I had a litter of Peruvian true redtails as well as a litter of Suriname true redtails. And what I noticed is that the Peruvians were so much bigger at birth. You know, part of this is Peruvians just tend to be bigger at birth. And then part of it is that the Suriname bloodline that had the litter tends to have smaller sized animals in the litter. Some of my other Surinames have bigger babies, almost as big as the Peruvians. So I held back, a number of animals from each litter for future breeders. And actually I did a video a few months ago when the animals were, I think, around 7.5 months old, and I compared the sizes. So today these guys are now a year old, so I'm going to do a weigh-off and compare the sizes of the animals. Just a little background on the feeding. So I've been feeding these animals every 10 days or so, 10 to 14 days. They've had roughly 30 meals at this point. And the Peruvians are now eating large mice. This is one of them right here, the male. The Surinames are still on maybe a large hopper, a very small adult sized mouse. They're not yet up to eating larger mice. This Peruvian probably could eat a small rat. Would probably be the maximum, so I could probably switch this guy up to rats pretty soon. But although they are eating larger rodents, the frequency of feeding is of course the same between the Peruvian and the Suriname. So the Peruvians are technically taking in more food per feeding as far as weight, but as far as the number of prey items, it's the same, about once every 10 to 14 days. If you want, you can check out that earlier weigh-off video, but I'll just let you know that the weights of both of the Surinames at about 7.5 months of age was around 85 grams, whereas this Peruvian at the same age, about 7.5 months, was about 240 grams. So the Peruvians were about 3 times the size at 7.5 months. So now we'll see if the Surinames have caught up as far as the weight. And I've got my little scale here, the scale and this tub to tear it out on. And I did another weigh-off video and I aimed the camera at the scale, but unfortunately you couldn't see the weight, something to do with the digital readout. So trust me, I'm going to weigh them, and you can trust me, I'm going to give you the correct weight. So turning on the scale, and I'm going to zero it out. Okay, now I'm going to put the snake on the scale. Hopefully he'll hold still and not bite me. Okay, I got 344 grams. So he's put on about 100 grams. Yeah, 344. He's put on about 100 grams in the last 4.5 months or so, 4.5, 5 months. So pretty good growth. And then I'd say he's probably a few inches longer. It's really hard to get an exact measurement on these guys, but nice size for a 1-year-old Peruvian true redtail, maybe 2.5 feet, maybe a little longer than that, and 344 grams. And our next contestant is this male Suriname redtail boa, and this guy is the same age. He's now a year old as the Peruvian, and you'll notice he does look quite a bit smaller. There's no doubt he's, I don't know, probably about 6 inches shorter, not nearly as girthy. But what I will say is he's definitely put on some nice muscle tone. Compared to my newborn 2021 Surinames, this guy just has this really muscular feel. He's got this nice definition of the muscle. And some people would say, well, he looks really small for being a year old. But I'm not worried, because this guy started off a little bit small just from the bloodline he was in. He's eating fine, he's growing slowly but steadily. I have no worries. It's normal for these guys to take 4 to 5 years to reach, a breeding size of, 5 feet or so. And I know from previous experience with my other holdbacks that they've taken this long. And now these animals that are, 4, 5, 6 years old are in really good shape, really nice muscle tone. So if your true redtail's growing a little slow at first, don't be overly concerned. Okay, so this guy, remember, was about something like 85 grams back in 4.5 months ago. So we'll do the honors and do a weigh-in. Okay, and he is 140 grams, 140. Okay, so he's put on about 60 grams, 60 to 65 grams in the last 4.5 months. And I'd probably go in a few inches as well. He's probably, I always say 2.5 feet, but you can see he's about, you know, 5 or 6 inches shorter than the Peruvian. But nice looking boa, 1-year-old male Suriname true red tail. So interestingly, we have 140 versus 340 for the Peruvian, so it's a difference of about 200 grams. But remember, it's 4.5 months ago, the male Peruvian was about 3 times the weight. So proportionately, this guy's catching up a little bit. You know, the male Peruvian is not still 3 times his weight. You know, he's about over 2 times the weight, you know, if I can do the math in my head. But, you know, the point is don't obsess about the weights or sizes of your animals. As long as they're eating, they're not regurgitating, they have nice muscle definition, it's all good. Now on to the girl 2020 red tail babies. And this is my female Peruvian. She's actually in shed right now. And if you recall from some of my previous videos, she's a little testy and can be a little moody sometimes, so I'm kind of keeping her away from my face. And of course, when they're in shed, they get a little cranky, so we'll see how she does today. So far, so good. So let me just zero out the scale. And to remind you, she was about 140 grams or so, or I'm sorry, 240 grams or so back 4.5 months ago for the first video. And let's give her a weight, if she's going to cooperate. She is 380 grams, so quite a bit bigger than the male, about 40 grams or so. She doesn't really look that much bigger, but you can see pretty good size for a 1-year-old boa. You know, probably close to 3 feet. It always cracks me up, these old books which claim that boas are supposed to get to 4 or 5 feet in the first year. I mean, really bad info. You know, this is why people end up power feeding them, and they don't understand why they're not growing. You know, the books are wrong, okay? Because this boa is in perfect health, exactly where she should be for a 1-year-old true red tail boa. 380 grams, which is a nice weight gain from the last weigh-in 4.5 months ago. And here's our last boa to weigh in. This is my female Suriname from 2020. And she's actually noticeably bigger than the male, although you can see she's still quite a bit smaller than both of my Peruvian boas. With this real nice muscle tone, you always want to see this line down the, you know, the center of the side of the boa. Just shows you the muscle tone. And if you can't see that line, your boa, there's a pretty good chance it's obese, so you probably shouldn't be feeding it as much. But this boa is in great shape. Again, she was about 85 grams or so 4.5 months ago, so we'll give her a weigh-in. And she is 153 grams, okay? So she's a little bit bigger than my male Suriname, but, you know, not that much bigger. Still quite a bit smaller than the Peruvians. So, you know, again, this is normal. I expect that my Peruvians are gonna grow faster than my Surinames. They'll get to about the same size as adults, probably in the 5 to 8 foot range. But, you know, again, this animal is exactly where it needs to be for a 1-year-old Suriname red tail. So that's my 1-year check on my Suriname and Peruvian true red tail holdbacks. I hope this video was helpful. I know a lot of people are really concerned and really obsessed about their boa size, and they think it's growing too fast or too slow, and they got to feed it more or feed it less. And you get all kinds of extremes, people feeding twice a week to people feeding once every 2 months. And again, use common sense. You want slow, steady growth. I feed my baby boas typically every 10 days to 2.5 weeks. And they should be putting on the same kind of weight of growth for true red tails, you know, 8 inches a year or so. And I did a previous video on that, so you can check that out if you want. But, you know, don't get overly obsessed. Just concentrate on looking at your boa's muscle tone and that it doesn't regurgitate. And chances are your boa is doing just fine. So hope you enjoyed this. As always, shoot me any questions or comments you might have. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your boas.